Welcome to Eye on Africa here on France 24 with me, Jean-Emile Jameen, taking you through all the latest news from the continent today. Starting with this headline. The Tanzanian commission appointed by the president herself releases its report into last year's election violence. It says more than 500 people were killed in the post-election unrest, with thousands injured, including more than 800 by gunfire and 245 still missing. The opposition, though, firmly rejects the findings. Then Pope Leo wraps up his first major international tour with a mass in Equatorial Guinea, ending an 11-day African visit across 4 countries. He calls for justice, peace and dignity while defending diplomacy. We'll look at the key messages and lasting legacy of the trip here on the show. And we put the spotlight on Congolese music star Fally Ipupa, marking 20 years in the industry with new albums and concerts in Paris. From Kinshasa to global stages, he's helped modernize rumba, blending it with R&B and urban sounds. And we'll bring all those sounds for you here on the show. The Commission of Inquiry into Electoral Violence in Tanzania has released its report this Thursday, commissioned by President Samia Suluhu Hassan herself, who was re-elected with 97.66% of the vote. The opposition has rejected the findings, but the report acknowledges hundreds of deaths following last year's election. It says at least 518 people were killed in post-election unrest, with thousands injured, including more than 800 by gunfire and 245 still missing. Violence followed protests over alleged repression and an internet shutdown. Bastien Renouy brings us more.
According to this report, 518 people were killed and 2,200 were injured. It's interesting to see that the government is acknowledging for the first time that hundreds of people were killed in just a few days. But these numbers are way below what was announced by opposition members right after the election. According to Chadema, which is the main opposition party in Tanzania, between 1,000 and 2,000 people were killed just after the election. According to the chairman of the committee, it's impossible to know who is responsible for the deaths of these people. And he says that those responsible of the violences are the civilians themselves. He says that they were manipulated by politicians and that slogans such as Samia must go or no reform, no election led to the violence. In its conclusions, the report says that reforms are possible to improve the situation, that it's possible to improve police accountability and to strengthen national reconciliation efforts. And I can tell you that Chadema, the main opposition party, disagree with that. Opposition members say that they cannot recognize this report since that members of the commissions are linked to the government.
Pope Leo XIV has ended his first African tour with a final mass in Equatorial Guinea, closing an 11-day, 4-nation trip that drew huge crowds and emotional scenes across the continent. In Malabo, tens of thousands gathered in heavy rain for his farewell liturgy before he departed for Rome. Throughout his trip, the Pope travelled more than 17,000 kilometers across Algeria, Angola, Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea, where he was met with similar raucous welcomes and large public celebrations. Now, during that journey, he focused on messages of peace, social justice and criticism of exploitation of Africa's resources. For a full recount, let's bring in Tutu Alicante, human rights lawyer and anti-corruption activist from Equatorial Guinea, but who is currently in exile in the United States. Thank you for joining us, Tutu. As someone who is in exile in the US and who has seen the Pope meeting with leaders from these 4 countries that we've mentioned, what are your first emotions, especially after that meeting with Obiang?
Yeah, well, I am very happy for the people of the Catholic people of the African continent to have seen the moral figure of their church. We have to understand that the Pope speaks with a unique moral voice. And the messages that he has been able to deliver in Equatorial Guinea, as well as Cameroon and Angola, has been crystal clear about the importance of good governance. And that's a message that I, as a human rights activist, as an anti-corruption activist, welcome. The danger is always that, with a moral voice, there is always a danger of these governments weaponizing that voice and turning it into a political message. And that is the fear that I have with the Pope going to Equatorial Guinea.
Do you think that the message will sink, though, for these governments? Do you think the right strategy of the Catholic Church is to send the Pope and speak face-to-face with these leaders, or does it actually risk legitimizing them in the process?
The reality is there is a video of the Pope speaking in a prison in Bata, and you can see all the prisoners singing and actually singing freedom, freedom, freedom. And that is the message that the people in Equatorial Guinea want to see from the Vatican, from the church. However, the danger here is that, look, yesterday the Pope himself mentioned how it's been almost 40 years since Pope John Paul II was in Equatorial Guinea, and the messages that he delivered then about the importance of good governance still resonate today. So we fear that this government, particularly on the eves of a monarchical change of power here, where Theodorin, the vice president, and son of the president, is likely to soon become president, we fear that the messages that this Pope is delivering are not going to get to the political leaders.
So the bottom line is, if we don't see reforms, if we don't see prisoner releases, was the visit still worth it?
No, for the reasons that people like myself care about. We want the Pope and we want the Vatican to be firm in its commitment to a world in which human dignity means something, a world in which human rights and anti-corruption or transparency mean something. So a visit without tangible results do not mean anything for the people of Equatorial Guinea.
And there's so many Catholics, though, in Africa who will be looking at this and wanting that change. But if you, as you say, nothing has happened in all of these years that popes have actually tried to spread this message, what can they actually take going forward? Is there hope that the Catholic Church can actually be an instrument of a change, or do the Catholics of Africa have to look elsewhere?
Well, speaking as someone who myself, I was in the seminary and 3 years away from becoming a Catholic priest, studying theology and philosophy, I can say that one of the reasons why people like myself went into the path of becoming a Catholic priest, was because we strongly believe in the message of liberation theology, of the message of the Bible being used to promote social change. However, today in Equatorial Guinea, that's not what we have. What we have in Equatorial Guinea is a Catholic Church that works hand in glove with the dictatorship. A Catholic Church that has become instrumentalized by the Obiang regime to keep the masses in check. And that is what we need to change from the Vatican. I think that's the message that I personally have not heard from this Pope, a strong message to bishops, to the leaders of the local churches about the importance of standing with the people and not standing with the dictators.
So if you had given the Pope your own message of, if we can say, wisdom before he departed on this African trip, what exactly would you have told him?
I think a couple of things. One, ensure that the local church, the Catholic Church in Equatorial Guinea, as well as in Cameroon, Angola, and other African countries, stand with the people. And then the second thing, make it clear to governments like the one in Equatorial Guinea that they should never expect another visit from the Vatican unless or until things dramatically change. And what things do we want to see change? Obiang has been in power now for 47 years. That cannot happen in a democracy. So we really want democratic governments in which transfer of power is a real thing. We really want countries in which the judiciary, independence of the judiciary exists. We want a country in which corruption, Equatorial Guinea is one of the most corrupt countries on the African continent, and that has to change. And those are the messages that I need from the Vatican.
It's Tutu Alicante speaking in exile after his move from Equatorial Guinea, just on the Pope's visit there. Let's move on. 15 migrants from Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru say that they were quietly deported from the United States and flown for 27 hours in handcuffs and shackles before arriving in the DR Congo. They're now staying in a hotel in Kinshasa, and the group says that they were detained for months without trial before being transferred in what they describe as a sudden deportation under U.S. immigration policy. With no French and uncertain legal status, they said that their future remains uncertain. Take a look.
For the last 6 days, this hotel in Kinshasa has hosted some unexpected guests. 15 South American migrants freshly deported from the United States by the Trump administration.
I don't know what happened. I was detained for 5 months. I spent 5 months without appearing before a judge. And then suddenly, on April 15th, I was told that I was going to be transferred to the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Their arrival has been complicated. None of them speak French, the local language, and many of them have already fallen ill. Although some have been granted a 7-day visa, they might soon be left to their own devices.
It's clear that this country is one of the poorest in the world. All I'm hoping for right now is that the Colombian authorities will help me obtain a travel document so that I can go home. Because, frankly, I'm more afraid of being in this country than in my own. I'm more afraid of being here in Africa than in Colombia.
Their arrival was kept discreet and took place in the middle of the night. It is the first transfer of deported migrants to the DRC and another step in Trump's controversial immigration policy.
I was like, I don't want to go to the DRC. I'm scared. It's a country I don't know. I don't speak the language. I'm really anxious and my family is desperate. We found ourselves here in the DRC after an extremely long 27-hour flight during which our hands and feet were handcuffed the whole time.
Cooped up in a hotel under police custody, the 15 migrants are expected to stay in the country for a short period of time, but their situation still remains extremely uncertain.
In South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa has suspended National Police Commissioner Fany Masemola over allegations linked to a 228 million rand irregular health services contract. Masemola denies any wrongdoing, but prosecutors say the Medicare 24 tender is part of a wider corruption probe into fraud, money laundering and abuse of procurement systems within the police. Notorious businessman Vusimuzi Matlala, linked to the company, is among several accused alongside 15 others facing charges. The case is central to the Madlanga Commission, investigating alleged infiltration of criminal syndicates into law enforcement. Lieutenant General Puleng Dimpane, who's been serving as SAP's chief financial officer, has been appointed acting police chief as the inquiry proceeds. And finally, Congolese music star Fally Ipupa is celebrating 20 years in the industry with new albums and landmark concerts in Paris after rising from Kinshasa to become one of Africa's most recognized artists. A pioneer in modernizing Congolese rumba, he now blends it with R&B, pop and urban sounds. Take a listen.
From Kinshasa to international stages, Fally Ipupa has become one of Africa's most recognized artists. He first rose to prominence in the early 2000s, before launching a solo career that helped modernize Congolese rumba. 2 decades on, he is releasing a new project recorded in Paris, alongside a second album focused on traditional rumba.
For me, it's an album for celebrating, to mark all these years. It was an album that represents me the most because after 20 years of a solo career, I really needed to let loose.
His music blends rumba with R&B, pop and urban influences. The mix, he says, reflects both his roots and his evolution.
But still it has that underground side, that rumba roots side that I grew up with, which is something that belongs to us Congolese, to us Africans.
Rumba is today part of the UNESCO heritage. Fally Ipupa sees it as part of Congo, highlighting the influence of Congolese music globally.
I'd say it's Congo that feeds the musical world, simply because we're just too talented. There's our music. It's a country of music. And then I think we have a wide diversity of musical styles. And I think today there's just so much talent. So much.
To mark the milestone, he will perform 2 concerts at the Stade de France in Paris, a rare achievement for an African francophone artist. After 20 years, Fally Ipupa remains a leading figure in taking Congolese rumba to a global audience.
And if you're in the area, the Stade de France is going to be brimming with excitement. The 2nd and 3rd of May, that's when Ipupa will be performing. That's all the news from the continent for now. There's more coming up on France 24.